Welcome to the Every Gym Podcast. My name is Andy Brady, joined again in studio by local volleyball dad and guru of all things nets and spikes, Keith Warren.
Wow, spikes, huh?
I clearly was drawing empty at the end there. Like I felt like I had a roll and I ran out.
Throwback to spikes. Don't let my girls hear you say spike.
What would I need to say now? Hit?
It would be a hit, yes.
My apologies. Yeah. I'm old. I color my hair, I guess.
That happens to us.
Today is our second episode on generosity as a disciple. Welcome to the Every Gym Podcast. Keith and I are speaking on generosity and proper volleyball terminology.
Yes.
Which my daughter did get to start playing volleyball this year.
Yeah.
So that grew a new kinship between the two of us.
Yeah. She's a little young for the spike, though.
A little young. We are definitely still just working on getting that serve over.
Yeah.
Underhand serve. Every now and then we might do an overhand hit, but it is fun. Just for us finding the avenues where our kids are loving things, but also they have a focus that you didn't know that they had.
Yeah.
And a drive.
It's amazing what a little guy can accomplish, putting their mind to something. And we get to reward that, right? We get to encourage that this is what hard work, this is a way that hard work pays off.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's, and me and another one of my kids, we were doing something in the backyard, and they're like, hey, Daddy, this is fun. I want to be better at it. And it's like, hey, we do this a few thousand more times.
Yeah.
Probably be pretty good at it. And I wasn't trying to rain on their parade, but it was like why would we do it that many times? I was like, well, you know that thing we just got done doing an hour ago? Yeah. Well, we did that a couple thousand times, and look how much better you are.
Yeah.
We just find the things you love and give her a go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's good. All right. So last time we spoke on generosity as a disciple, and you did say from the very beginning of it, in terms of biblical generosity, and we were talking motivation of my life comes from God and is for God's purposes. And generosity is not just giving of a financial amount, although it includes that it's more than just that. Right. It's more elements of my life. And this episode will focus more on the non-financial aspects. But before we get into that, it is budget season around the church. At time of the recording, everybody's getting their budget proposals ready for the 2025 year. You work with Parker Baptist Association. I presume they also have budgets.
Yes.
So it's that time of year. Do we share a conviction that it is a biblical requisite that a church, the actual organization, so in our case, Northside Baptist Church, as a church, be generous?
Yeah, I would say we do, without a doubt. And this is not something that I instigated. I inherited this position and this budgetary position specifically. But our church in the 2024 budget, roughly 11 to 12% of our receipts, of our net receipts, are scheduled to go elsewhere.
Okay.
So we're talking about denominational giving, local associational giving, church planning partnerships, local mission efforts, supporting local mission organizations that are organized outside of Northside, in addition to all the effort we put into the community through missions that are based at Northside. So a good portion of our money before we ever do anything from a ministry perspective or make a single payroll run, we're sending money elsewhere. And so we want to model what we're asking people to do as an organization. And so I think it's healthy for us. And I think 2024 has the possibility to be about at least 17 years of record giving for us. Yeah. So it's a possibility anyway. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think God is pleased when we're generous.
Yeah.
Beyond our own.
It's that's good. And I like that you make the distinction. This approximately 12% is not including the ministries that happen through Northside with the Northside name attached to it.
Yeah.
That's ministry God has us doing.
Yeah.
These are things outside of us.
Yeah.
That was something that we looked at, again, kind of in that season of when we first started visiting Northside, and it just so happened to be vote on the budget season.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I can do math real quick. How much do they give away?
Yeah.
Like just that I don't see the direct
Yeah.
benefit from it.
Yeah.
So that's something we've noticed from the beginning. What are some ways that you've seen Northside or the people of Northside demonstrate discipleship in their generosity beyond financial?
Well, I'm blessed to work with all of our committees.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get to see currently 18 men and women who surrender time to come and sit and wrestle through decisions, questions about, how we should attack an issue or how we should approach a repair or, something of that nature, how we should compensate our staff, how we should plan our budget for the next year, how we should deal with, extra things that come along the way during the year. And so certainly those people are giving of their time to do that work. But man, you can walk down the hall of our campus on any given Sunday and observe literally hundreds of people teaching Bible studies, wrestling kids, wrangling
in
kids.
the appropriate way with a background check.
Correct.
And proper training.
Correct. Maybe wrangling is better than wrestling.
Please say Rick. We'll edit to wrangling. Wrangling kids and action.
But, now in the parking lot, our host team, musicians, singers, I joke in our new member class that if there's ever a volunteer strike at Northside, I'm not coming.
Yeah.
Because it'll be a mess.
Absolutely.
Because we don't do what happens here on Sunday between 9:30 a.m. and noon without a lot of people being very generous with their time, with their patience, with their kindness, far beyond what a financial resource. And literally, we could not buy that.
Yeah.
There have been seasons where we've looked at childcare, for instance, and just asked the question: Should we just pivot to a paid professional childcare? And every time the answer is no, because the heart of a person volunteering in that role is worth far more than a professional just taking care of the child. So it's ubiquitous. Yeah. Everything we do has someone being generous in some way. And that doesn't even touch the deacons, the adult teachers and directors, and it's an enormous number of people.
Yeah, it's pretty overwhelming whenever you start to recognize it, right? Who's volunteering right now and how many?
Yeah.
It's an overwhelming amount.
Yeah.
A verse, and it happens. It's a result of the series that we went through in the college ministry this summer. But in Matthew 10:8, Jesus is commissioning the 12 disciples, first mission trip, paired them off, is giving them instructions. And it almost feels it is not the main emphasis in this commissioning, but he tells them, freely you have received, freely give. And that's just that one line, not new to me, not new to us, but I think there are times in life where we may teach or come across a phrase that we've read or heard thousands of times, and it's almost like Jesus opens our eyes anew to it over and over.
Yeah.
And this is one for about 3 months now that's just been hanging up here in the hopper. And one of the things we've started to see with our students, and that we've pointed out, and tell me if you've seen this in ministry at large. In my walk, there is a ceiling that I will hit that honestly, the only way through the ceiling is to actually begin to give of the new life that Christ has given me. That it's in that recognition of the talents, the time, the resources, the willingness, that whenever those are given away to the kingdom, then I can begin to grow into the next season that Christ has for me. Is that, am I just, in saying that, and I'm asking this seriously, in saying that, is that just my perspective of working with a very specific demographic, or have you seen that be true for followers of Jesus as the whole?
I think it's true for followers at every level.
Okay.
It sort of mirrors my own calling
Okay.
and walk, and in that, as I would get to a place where God would be ready to move me, I might not be seeing that,
Yeah.
and there would be this sort of discomfort that would come, and until I realize, oh, He's calling me to act in this way,
Yeah.
which would lead to this entire new horizon of possibilities and opportunities. But I think it does require that of us. And, we've seen, I've witnessed people who've attended church for years take an opportunity to do something uncharacteristic for them,
Yeah.
like a octogenarian serving in our packs of love,
Yeah.
and choosing to do that, and recognizing in that moment, I wish I had done this 40 years ago.
Wow.
Because the reward, relationally, spiritually, just that sense of being part of something that's bigger than themselves,
Yeah.
is just so present in their face, in their lives, and so I think what you're observing with your students happens across the board with adults.
That's wild. And the impact sometimes being both seen and unseen. If you volunteer with kids, you tend to see that part of it, weekly, and then over time, of course, if they come back to you. If you're helping people in the parking lot, you're kind of seeing that impact in the moment. Probably one that I don't think anyone would expect me to speak of right now, though. We just had a death in my family this last week. And to show up in the office on Tuesday and open the cabinet where our boxes are, and there's an envelope with a card, handwritten, with a little crocheted thing from Happy Hats.
Yeah.
Someone that, those women, it's all women, correct?
I believe you're right. We may hear
people,
otherwise.
In the event that I'm missing someone from memory, those saints giving of their generous time and their talents simply to do an act for people that says you are known and you are loved by Jesus, and you are known and you are loved by His people.
Yeah.
I work at the church that's a ministry of, and it's still ministered to me. You know what I mean? It's just,
you bet.
Speaking of the rewards of being generous, it's I can't speak highly enough of it.
Yeah.
What are perhaps some creative things that you've seen over the years where maybe there's been a need that was uncovered in our community that you've seen God provide for that need through His people?
I try to warn our new members as they come in that they are sitting in seats that were at one time filled by people joining our church that had no idea that they'd be leading ministries in the future. And the reality is, though, that because we're all wired a little bit differently, because we all see the world a little differently, and because we all experience the world differently, that puts us in different circles of people, different groups. We interact and apply what God is doing, either through our church or through our own discipleship, to those situations uniquely. And so I sat and listened to a pitch in my office for an idea to feed some kids on the weekends. The pitch was the kids are fed through the public school system Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
And they come to school on Monday with behavioral challenges. And the hypothesis was that they weren't getting fed on the weekends, and that was translating into behavioral challenges on Monday. And so, I'm not a venture capitalist, but I could see and detect from the tone of the people sitting across from me that I did not need to make this complicated.
Yeah.
And so the need was pretty simple: a room to store some supplies, an announcement to get others involved, and a little bit of seed money to get them started.
Yeah.
And we did just that. And I think it was 2010. It's in our history book, but that little spark today feeds close to 150 kids every week with enough food to sustain them for the weekend. There's a additional effort at Christmas for the long break, also at Thanksgiving for a long break, spring break for the longer break. The schools have stepped up and are doing something over the summer, and so we're just tangential to that. But it is God moving in the heart of someone to address a very much a felt need.
Yeah.
We're not putting brochures in these packs.
Yeah.
We're not expecting those families to show up at Northside. We're just doing what the right thing to do is.
A true, generous act of love.
Absolutely. And we started it with, I think, about $10,000 or something like that. I'd have to look at the numbers for 24, but it's a 5-figure number that they spend every year. They have a $5,000 line in our budget and spend 10 times that. And it's never lacked for support. Ever.
People just designate that giving.
People,
to it.
it's so much a part of who we are.
Yeah.
Of the 180-ish lines in our budget, it's the only one that gets its own line on the giving report.
That's awesome.
So it's in the budget, aside from missions, which is really a combination of things. Because somebody followed the Spirit's prompting to be generous to someone in need.
Yeah.
And we've been doing it long enough now that, there are kids in college that we fed.
That's wild.
On the weekends through our program. And another beautiful piece of this is that a great idea, a Spirit-led idea, isn't retained in just one location.
Absolutely.
Other churches saw, oh gosh, we can do this.
Absolutely.
And they adopted other schools. And so now, it's just a cool thing to see that God has spread it all over our community. And it was all, somebody sat in a chair and joined a church.
That's wild.
So, yeah.
It just kind of reminds me of recognizing the things that we notice. God allows us to notice them.
Yeah.
I know that sounds almost hippie, but it took way too long for me to realize that some of the things that I was noticing in my day-to-day orbit were not accidents.
Right.
They weren't happenstance. God let me notice it. So then what do I do? How do I steward what God has allowed me to notice?
Yeah.
And here we have an example, follower of Christ noticing the need and then trying to be obedient with what they noticed and seeing how God used it.
Yep. It's just God working in a person's life.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Any other stories that come to mind over the last episode or this one of just kind of how you've seen the generosity of others just kind of push forward the kingdom or proclaim the glory of Christ?
Well, I really feel obligated to kind of brag on the church in general.
Yeah.
Um, we talked a bit about the pandemic
Mm-hmm.
last time and how um, that that first week of a pandemic offering was a definitely moment for panic.
Yeah.
When the offering was not enough to cover even half of payroll,
Yeah.
much less the rest of what needed to take place. There's a legitimate concern about what the future looks like, but in that moment, and in 1,000 moments before that, and 1,000 moments since, um, I've just been blessed to sit at the helm, administrative helm
Yeah.
of a church that has collectively locked arms to move forward
Mm-hmm.
in a way that glorifies God and the kingdom. And
Yeah.
so there are stories, individual stories I could probably share, but I think collectively is just important to recognize that um, there's no one behind a curtain with a golden pen
Mm-hmm.
writing a ginormous check to to bail us out every year.
No financial backstop.
No,
If we
no,
just,
it's a 1,000 or more families,
yeah.
all with their own obligations and their own desires and dreams, making sacrificial gifts
Mm-hmm.
to advance the kingdom
Yeah.
through the ministries of our church. And I feel a deep sense of responsibility to that, stewardship responsibility to that. Um, and it's also great to be part of that group,
Yeah.
right? That our family is part of that group. So I think that in my mind, the collectiveness or the collective effort that we've seen is just it's a testimony for the ages in my mind.
That's incredible. I couldn't agree more. I hadn't even thought of it until just as you were speaking on the collective response of our church. I'm reminded of as much of a tragedy as the Russian invasion of Ukraine has been,
Mm,
which started on, I believe, a Friday night,
mm.
our time, that first Sunday morning after.
Yeah,
The Mackenzies getting on stage,
yeah,
and us learning that they were then going to go so that there was a place for deaf refugees to
mm-hmm.
come to.
Yeah,
And then our church's response
mm-hmm.
with nobody knew ahead of time. Well, I'm sure four of you knew ahead of time, but collectively we did not know ahead of time that we
Yeah,
were going to be asked to give to this kind of impromptu mission trip,
yeah,
to go take the gospel and resources to deaf refugees coming out of
mm-hmm.
Ukraine. And was it 35,000 that first day, 75 by the end of the week?
Yeah,
Am I remembering those numbers
yeah.
correctly?
That's pretty accurate. Yeah,
Like, it was just absolutely
yeah,
insane. And I just remember kind of sitting in my office that week, and for whatever reason, it just kind of kept rolling in the mind, and realizing in a moment, here was a family from here that was going, but if you are leaving your home, going to a place that is chaotic, that you don't have a way to communicate with the people that are helping others,
mm-hmm.
and then someone in a language that you do recognize, either Russian Sign Language, I think is the predominant one for them, or ASL or whatever, that says, hey, we are here for you because there is a God who knows you,
Yeah,
and there is a God who loves you.
yeah,
That is an incredibly believable gospel
yeah,
in that moment.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, we're not here because of the Red Cross. We're not here because of
No.
the United States government. We're here because of the body of Christ.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's and each of these ministries, in its own unique ways and abilities, gets to do that for individuals here,
yeah,
across our country, and obviously globally.
yeah.
So, Keith, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
These 2 episodes, I've
bet.
enjoyed it. It's a busy season around here,
It is.
and so it's always fun to get to take a quick little break and get what might be the busiest person in October to add 2 recordings to his
it's
episode.
good.
But the good news is that when Keith shows up, the temperature drops 25 degrees outside and we get
nice.
our day of fall.
Nice. That's
So
right. Yeah.
whenever you're listening to this and it's 95, pray that Keith would accept another podcast invite. Until next time, thank you for listening to the Every Gym Podcast.